Welcome back, everybody. Full-Time Fit Family on another adventure. This time, we're in the beautiful city of St. Louis, Missouri, and we'll be checking out the City Museum. Now, the City Museum is a place unlike anything I've ever seen before. As you see, we walk through here. We're in an industrial area, and we're basically walking into what appears to be a 9 or 10 story old industrial building. Now, the City Museum is a repurposed shoe factory. I believe it was a former space, the International Shoe Building on Washington Avenue. That is a museum that exists or consists of largely repurposed architectural and industrial objects. So as you'll shortly see here, there's a lot of industrial pieces of machinery and equipment. There's cranes and fire engines and old airplanes and a lot of city building components, facades, subway tiles, mosaic tiles, old doors, old buttresses, and that sort of thing. This City Museum was actually the idea of an artist. So the City Museum was founded by this artist by the name of Bob Casilli and his then wife Gail. And basically the story goes that Bob and Gail bought the International Shoe Company factory and warehouse that was mostly vacant back in 1993 for pennies on the dollar. And what they ended up doing was in 95 they started construction on a museum for the city and for children, basically creating sculptures and art and things for the kids to play with repurposed and recycled materials. So about 2.5 years later, in late 1997, the museum opened, and it attracted over 300,000 people in its first few years. Bob actually remained the artistic director until he passed away in 2011. But the museum over the last 25 or so years has seen a lot of improvements and continual expansion. There was some major expansions in 2002, 2003, 2004 that took over some of the upper levels of the museum or of the building onto the roof, onto the outside area, and really created this unique Willy Wonka-esque play space that is unlike anything I've ever seen. As you see here, the kids are walking through these basically industrial rebar and cement tunnels and passageways that are winding and twisting and lead from one place to another. And it's really cool because you may enter in a tunnel on the first floor and pop out somewhere on the third floor or maybe the second and a half floor. As you see here, we take the camera through one of these. I will make note that because it is largely industrial materials, a lot of steel, a lot of concrete, a lot of hard surfaces, it might not be a bad idea to wear knee pads, especially if you're an adult. I know I had some achy knees afterwards crawling to keep up with the kids. Now, the kids didn't seem to mind. They're young and resilient, but their old parents were not able to be quite the same. Another cool tip is a flashlight as well. So you'll see shortly here in some of the later clips that there are a lot of darkness and a lot of tunnels and winding things and nooks and crannies that lead to different places, and having a flashlight really allows the kids to maybe feel a little safe and give that cool explorer vibe for them to kind of look through. As the kids come down this big coil, which if I remember correctly was an old refrigeration coil from Anheuser-Busch, you'll see that there's a lot of tight spaces, a lot of crawling. This mezzanine area is actually pretty open, so there's a lot of rebar and tubes and tunnels where you can see the kids, but you'll shortly see here we get into some dark caves in the basement areas or some tunnels on the second and third floor that are long and dark and narrow and don't even look like they should be a space that you can crawl in, but there's nooks and crannies everywhere to get behind walls and explore things, so very easily can get lost. So here we're kind of walking into more of the what I believe is called the World Aquarium area.
The video.
A lot of nautical themed things, anchors and chains, fish tanks and whatnot. Really cool space. One of the things I was extremely impressed with the City Museum was just the attention to detail and the intricacy. it's unlike any other place, museum or corporate play place for children that I've ever experienced. And I would attribute that to the artistic angle and the driving factor behind that. I mean, this is a living, breathing sculpture, basically. And you can tell because everywhere you look, there's little things, like my 2 clownfish there. There's little things for the kids to do, to explore, to touch, to feel. From the sculptures hanging from the ceiling to little nooks and crannies hidden behind walls to ventilation ducts which look like an off-limits area, but kids can actually climb through. I mean, it is just it's overwhelmingly cool and intricate and unique, and just really, really opens up the creativity and explorative nature of kids. With that being said, though, I will make note as we pass by the world's largest pencil and into, I believe this was the 2nd or 3rd floor, which is more of like a skate park, kind of a parkour area with rope swings and quarter pipes and cement bowls and stuff. But one thing I will make note of is this is a museum that is full of nooks and crannies, a lot of them dark. So I would not necessarily recommend this for young kids. I don't want to put an age limit on it, but 2 or 3 year old running around here might be a little bit nerve-wracking for a parent, because there are a lot of places that they can crawl to that may or may not come out where you expect them to be. They'll go in a tunnel or into a wall in one area, and you think they're going to come out the other side, but actually that tunnel leads from the 3rd floor down to the 1st floor. So it's probably best for kids that are more independent, maybe kids that know your phone number or your parents' name. That's not to say that there's not safety precautions. We were there, and actually it does get really crowded, even though it doesn't look like it here. It does get more crowded during the day, and there's a lot of kids, and not once did we see a kid lost or them having to make an announcement over the speaker or anything for parents of XYZ to come to the main stage or the main floor to reclaim their child. Every kid wears wristbands, and you write your phone number on the wristband if the kid does get lost. So there are safety precautions. It's just more of probably a comfort level with the kids. I could see a kid wandering off into a dark tunnel and getting scared or stuck or not knowing their way if they're a little kid. As I mentioned about the crowds, you'll see here that we are rarely running into other people. We were pretty fortunate in that we went on a Saturday, and I believe the museum opened at 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe 9, something like that, but about mid-morning. And we were one of the first few people in the door. There wasn't a line or anything, and the place really doesn't get crowded until after lunch, probably about 1 o'clock or so. I attribute that to just the vastness of the building and the things to do. As you come in, it's extremely overwhelming and sensory orientated things everywhere. And so a lot of people, when they first come in, they're going to hit that mezzanine level. There's the world's biggest pencil. They're going to hit that mezzanine level, and they're going to start exploring there before they kind of work their way up to the different floors, or maybe to the back of the building or the basement of the building in the caves. You can see here we got our old repurposed vault, which is cool. Again, all these old building and architectural components are just worked really beautifully into the space. And depending on where you're at and what the architectural piece is, there will be actually little informational plaques, which, as a history buff, I appreciated to be like, oh, this is the facade from the XYZ building in Chicago, sort of thing. So that was pretty cool. But getting back to the crowds, it does get pretty crowded with a lot of kids later in the day once people finally file in and make their way to the other levels. So I would definitely suggest going earlier in the morning and getting the first few hours of mostly by yourself playtime in. At this point here, we're going to walk down into what I believe is the basement area, but I believe they term it the caves. The Enchanted Caves, I believe. This was just so cool. it feels like you're being transported to a different world. And there are, as you can see here, a lot of things to see, but also a lot of sensory deprivation too. These caves are narrow and dark. I mean, there's cool gems on the walls and little things for kids to find. There's tons of nooks and crannies here, but this is where this might be a place where a smaller kid could get lost. So they also have a 10-story slide, which is really cool. We pan through here. It's the center of the building with the old pipe organ, and these corkscrews were, if I remember correctly, used by the old shoe factory to transport the shoes from one floor to the other. They basically turned them into a big corkscrew slide. They've got a 5-story slide, a 10-story slide, and maybe another slide that's 3 or 7 stories, something like that as well. As you see here, our kids exploring, these little tunnels, these passageways. It makes me smile because of the creativity and the curiosity that kind of you see in the kids' eyes. Like as Logan walks up here, that previous clip, it looked like the kids turned around, but Logan found a little hole and he's like, is this the right way to go? I don't know. Should I go in it? And sure enough, you wedge your little body in there and it's going to open up into some other little, nook and cranny play place for you to find. And that's the cool thing about this place. Everywhere you turn to, there's something to do, something to look, something to find, somewhere to explore. So here we head outside, look at that big ball pit. These balls were roughly kickball or dodgeball size balls. They actually have the ball pit separated into 2 areas, so if you do have younger kids, I think it's 5 and under, 6 and under, and then the older kid area, it's a lot of fun. They've got really high basketball hoops that those kids are trying to shoot the basketball into. As you pan up here, you see jets and airplanes and plankways and walkways and a school bus hanging over the edge of the building. Again, I've said this 3 or 4 times, but there's a million different routes and ways to explore this place, and it could keep you busy for days on end. So as we walk through some of the outdoor areas, I'm not going to take you through everything, but we'll walk through a couple of the different rope bridges and turrets and stuff. We've got some medieval castles that lead down to dungeons or spy towers. We've got, fire engines you can crawl on. We've got plankways and walkways, and you can see up there we've got a couple different jets you can climb to. There's just innumerable things to look and do and see. So here we are inside one of the jets, inside the fuselage, completely suspended in the air. I think this was the lower jet, which is probably, 20, 30 feet in the air alone. So you're pretty far up there, and everything is very open. You'll see everything is kind of caged in with these small pieces of rebar or mesh steel things. So you have a very open, and here's me walking out on the wing. You have a very open sense of depth to things, but you're also in a very safe environment too. I mean, there's dozens or more people climbing on this jet at the same time, and the thing is not rocking. It's not feeling like you're gonna fall or something's gonna break. So there's a real cool safety component to this, but also there's a lot of thrill too, because again, these little wires here, while they're all welded, were maybe a 1/4 inch thick. Slides throughout the building are very prevalent. They take a lot of old pipes and create slides, and other things. Here actually you'll see us on the roof. There's a nice little tranquil pond with some stepping stones, some climbing walls. As we pan up here, you'll see a Ferris wheel, water towers. There's a school bus that hangs over the edge. Literally anywhere you turn, from the basement of this building up to the roof of this building, there are activities and things to do, things to physically keep kids busy. So busy so that it exhausted us. One of the few reprieves were these cool little hammocks that the kids wanted to take a break in after playing for a couple hours. Here we are back inside in the, I guess I'll deem it the Treehouse Area. Now this was really impressive structure, mostly made of wood. You'll see a lot of the rebar or steel piping, but I think a lot of that is just to kind of direct people. It's not really structural. This thing was, probably spanned from the first floor up to the third or fourth floor, so, we're talking 30, 40 feet tall, and within that there's, dozens of different levels or platforms to crawl on and climb in. So this we spent a lot of time in. Very easy to kind of get lost in. As I pan down there, I think that's probably close to as tall as it gets. You're up there, and standing on those open air wires really gives you a sense of fear, if you have a fear of heights. They also have live performances, so second or third floor, I don't remember which one it is, they actually have a one-ring circus that they have daily live performances, like this woman who are hanging and spinning from her hair. So the City Museum is mostly a play area for kids, but it's also educational. They have a lot to do. We had a blast. We had to end the day with some Dippin' Dots and take a nice reprieve from all the sun and the playing. But basically, I would highly recommend going to the City Museum. With kids, even as an adult, it's really cool to see. I think probably the sweet spot there is if you have a kid like maybe 5 years old to like maybe 15 years old.
What do you think of this place?
The City Museum is
how many thumbs up would you give it?
Space. It's actually won many awards. I know it's been named Great Public Spaces by a lot of different publications and architectural magazines. It's won a lot of local and international awards as must-see destinations. And it's been described as a wild, singular vision of an oddball artistic mind. And I think that puts it really succinctly. This place is unlike any other, with the weirdest things you'll see. For example, as we walk down here to this really creepy, dark dungeon of an area, there's torture devices, and there's fake rats inside cages and stuff. And